And yes, I wish to continue, even though it's being recorded. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the July 5 meeting of the Denver Landmark Commission. And I have called the meeting to order, and I think we should begin by introducing ourselves. I'll start since I'm already gabbing. My name is Julie Johnson. I'm a Historic Preservation Project Manager, and I was nominated by the community at large. It looks like George would be the next.
Hi there, I'm George Dennis. I have the honor and privilege of curating a landmark home, and I was nominated by History Colorado.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, George. Gary? You're muted, dude.
Hello, I'm Gary Petrie. I'm an architect, and I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
Thank you, Gary. Larry.
Hello, I'm Larry Sykes. I'm an architect and I was nominated by History Colorado.
Thanks, Larry. And Anne?
Hi, I'm Ann Wattenberg. I'm an architect nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
Thank you, Anne. First up is our meeting records for approval. There were 2 meeting records, June 7 and June 21. Emily, thanks for doing some research for me. I appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions or corrections to any of the meeting minutes? I see none. Do I hear a move to approve said minutes?
I can do
I
the
think
approval.
I'll get this right.
Go for it,
Go
George.
ahead, George. George is good.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the meeting records from the meetings of January 7th, 2020, June 7th, 2022, and June 21st, 2022. And that's it.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I second.
Larry, thank you. All right, then let's take a vote. George?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
Anne?
Aye.
And Julie votes aye as well. The minutes are approved. Meeting records are approved as presented. Thank you very much. The next part of our meeting is reserved for public comment from anyone from the public that would like to speak on historic preservation as a whole, not a specific project, but if you have any statements to make about historic preservation, about Denver, that kind of thing, then this is the time for you. If you're joining by phone, please dial 9 on your keypad or email landmark@denver.gov. If you're using the computer, just use the hand raise button on the computer. Give anybody
Just
a
waiting.
moment.
I don't see any hands raised.
All right, okay. Then we will assume that there aren't any basic or any general public comments at this time.
And
Let's move
Julie,
on. Yeah.
just as a heads up, there's no one on the phone right now. I'll let you know if that changes.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that. All righty, okay, we are on to the consent agenda then. We have 4 items on the consent agenda. I understand that no one needs to recuse themselves from any of these projects. Okay, great. Are there any questions? Does anybody want to pull any of these items from the consent agenda? All righty then. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I can make that motion.
And thank you.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda, which consists of the following items. Application number 2018-COA-424, 649 Elizabeth Street. Application number 2022-COA-284, 2775 East 7th Avenue. Application number 2022-TAXC-4, 2309 North Hooker Street. And application number 2022-TAXC-5, 227 South Lincoln Street.
Terrific, thank you, Ann. Do I hear a second?
Second.
George, thank you. Then let us go ahead and take a vote. George,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
and Julie, I also vote aye. The consent agenda is approved as presented. If you are online waiting to find out about your consent agenda project, it has been approved. So you can either hang with us the rest of the afternoon or you can get off the line now because your project has been approved. All right, let's go on into the design review process portion of our meeting. I will announce the design review items in the agenda in order by address. Commission members will announce any conflicts of interest. The staff will introduce the application and make a recommendation, at which point the commissioners can question the staff. The applicant has 10 minutes to make a presentation and the commissioners may question the applicant. The public comment period is 2 minutes per person. And then staff can clarify if necessary. The commission will deliberate. And then the commission will make a motion and vote. So let's go on to the first one. It is 2022-COA-283, 2301, -2325 Blake Street in the Ballpark District, and Crystal is the staff member in charge. Take it away, Crystal.
Thanks, Julie. Let me see if I can get this going. All right. So the property is at 2301 and 2325 Blake Street. This is located in the Ballpark Neighborhood Historic District. According to the designation application, the McPhee and McGinty building at 2301 Blake Street, you can see here, was built in 1913 by the architectural firm Fisher & Fisher. It's an early factory building that had later additions in 1919 and 1950. Here you can see the existing conditions of the site, as well as the new proposed location for 2325 Blake Street, as well as the proposed demolition on 2301 Blake Street. So here's the existing and proposed site plan for the lot. The applicant is proposing to build a new 5-story mixed-use infill structure adjacent to 2301 Blake Street at 2325 Blake Street in the existing vacant parking area on the zone lot, which you can see on the left. The new infill structure will front onto Blake Street and will add a new cantilevered arcade adjacent to 2301 Blake Street, where the non-contributing portion of the building is proposed to be demolished. The structure will have a ground floor parking entrance facing onto Blake Street, as well as new apartment units and mixed uses at the ground level. 2301 Blake Street is a contributing structure to the district. However, the proposed demolition of the later 1950 addition, which you can see kind of outlined in red on the left at the parking lot area, is shown as non-contributing in a district map. So staff is supportive of the partial demolition of the non-contributing portion of the structure. And on the right, you can see the new proposed site for 2325 Blake Street, where the arcade area will be cantilevered kind of over the demolition area. So you can also see the footprint for 2325 Blake Street on the right. So here you can see the existing front facade for 2301 Blake Street with that later 1950 addition that's proposed for demolition on the right. On the bottom is the proposed elevation of 2301 Blake Street if the demolition of that addition is approved. The applicant has stated that they plan to restore the newly exposed portion of the wall to the original as closely as possible, and have stated that much of the interior wall does remain, though no photos have been provided that show that current configuration. The applicant stated more detail would be provided in phase 2, the design details. The removal of the non-contributing addition is proposed to make way for the new arcade at 2325 Blake Street. The new arcade will provide access to the rear alley and 1561 Park Avenue West, which is a property that's also being developed adjacent to the rear alley. However, that will be located outside the Ballpark Neighborhood Historic District boundaries, so we won't be seeing that, and no other demolition is proposed for 2301 Blake Street. So here's the ground plan comparison for 2325 Blake Street. The new infill structure will align closely with the primary structure at the facade along Blake Street. The simple building form and massing is characteristic of the district. However, the overall height is not characteristic of the block. The new infill structure will be located between the primary structure at 30 feet tall and 2363 Blake Street, which is listed as 33 feet 6 inches tall. The new structure has several different heights listed on different pages in the submittal package. They have it as 55 feet 4 inches, 58 feet 3 inches, and 60 feet 7.5. So staff would ask the applicant to clarify the true total height of the structure in future submittals, and just to have that consistent throughout the application package. The applicant has included heights of historic buildings in the surrounding context, such as 2261 Blake Street, which is at 74 feet 3 inches tall, and 2362 Blake Street, which is at 42 feet tall. Although the buildings are not located on the same block of the proposed structure, they are found within the adjacent context, and the proposed new infill structure would be between these heights, and so it does appear height-wise contextual to the district. So here you can see a street section at the arcade on the left, as well as the proposed first floor plan for the new structure at 2325 Blake Street. The main building entry is located at the interior part of the arcade, as seen on the right, and the height of the arcade shown is 25 feet tall, and that does not seem to create an inviting pedestrian streetscape at Blake Street, just due to the large height. The new infill structure does utilize the arcade for its main entrance to the structure, which is not typical of other structures in the surrounding context. There is no entrance directly into the new structure from the street, which is not typical of the district, as most other historic structures in the district have entries directly onto the street. So here's the compatibility demonstration that was provided by the applicant. As you can see, chamfered entries are common in the district, as well as using a steel lintel to break the base from the middle. The new infill structure also utilizes horizontal and vertical elements, such as that horizontal steel lintel to separate the base from the middle, as well as horizontal brick coursing at the base on the new proposed structure. So here's the streetscape drawings for the new structure, showing how it relates to the existing block, as well as the rhythms it's pulling from the surrounding context. The new infill structure appears to fall within the range of typical widths of buildings found in the surrounding context. However, it is wide. So breaking up the Blake Street facade into more distinct modules may better fit with the context of the historic district, as well as the primary structure found on the zone lot. As you can see here, the primary structure appears like two joined buildings, since the second part of the structure is a later 1919 addition. So here is the character defining features page that was provided by the applicant, showing multiple window styles and how they relate to the context of the area. The windows do not appear to be proportioned in size to human scale at the Blake Street facade. For instance, the windows at the base are taller and wider, 9 feet by 8 feet, than windows on the contributing structure, which is 8 feet by 5 feet. And the second floor windows on that first floor appear kind of as 2-story windows, because they just have a trim piece between the first and second floor. So they appear much larger than they actually are. So here's the Blake Street elevation for 2325. The new infill structure will include some typical features and rhythms found on historic structures within the district, like a base, middle, and top. The new infill structure uses contemporary vertically oriented window patterns that do not incorporate window openings at similar proportions to what's found in the historic district or on the contributing adjacent structure. Some of the windows, particularly above the arcade on the front facade, do seem to take nods from the contributing structure, though the other windows on the facade do not appear to relate to other windows that are called out on that character defining features page. The windows on the proposed infill structure emphasize a vertical nature with vertical mullions in 2 different patterns at the upper story, and one pattern over the arcade area and then another pattern over the rest of the structure. So those upper story window patterns within the surrounding context typically have paired sash window patterns with some spacing between the paired windows. This can be found at 2261, 2363, and 2262 Blake Street. The upper story window patterns found on this proposed structure do not really match those patterns. And the upper story windows appear kind of as one window rather than two paired windows, and are not a sash type of window, which would better match the historic character of the surrounding buildings. The surface area in the surface parking area in the building will also be accessed from the front facade on Blake Street as seen here, instead of on an alley. Access to the parking area should be moved to the rear of the building and be accessed from the alley, which would follow district patterns better. So here you can see the Park Avenue West elevation. The southwest elevation above the arcade will have some high visibility and should better fit the character of the district. Headers and sills at some of the windows would better reflect typical historic window patterns. Here you can see the rear elevation along the alley. The windows at the rear and side facades do not really appear to have any relation to the historic context, as they are very different from the front facade, and there are several different window styles. However, being at the side and rear elevations, there may be more flexibility for these windows. And then here you can see the side elevation, which faces towards 2363 Blake Street. Here again, you can see the windows on that first and second floor appear almost as two-story windows due to that large trim piece between them. The new infill structure will utilize a flat roof form like the primary structure on the lot. And then here's some isometrics for the proposal. The retail entrance to the structure at the chamfer corner here, you can see on the top left, may appear to be the primary entrance to the structure, although it will not function as a primary entrance. The structure also has strong vertical elements and kind of angled brick areas between the windows on the middle portion of the structure, which can be seen here, that are not characteristic of the district and have more of like a mid-century architectural style. And then here's some additional isometric views. The foundation height for the new structure also is not in line with 2301 or 2363 Blake Street and does not really appear to match the height of typical foundation lines on historic structures in the district. 2301 and 2325 Blake Street are located in the factory warehouse sub area, according to the designation application for the Ballpark Historic District. Buildings are more horizontal in form, according to the application, multi-storied, flat roofed, completely cover the lot, and they have a structural system of bays is articulated on the facade using details such as pilasters, columns, decorative brickwork, etc. So staff has some concerns with how the new proposed infill relates to other contributing structures in the district, particularly in terms of window patterning and placement, as well as the verticality of the facade design and bay articulation. Therefore, staff is recommending denial at this time.
Crystal, thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Crystal before we get going? Okay, I don't see any. All righty, then let's hear from our applicant. Looks like you're moving them over.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Rick Peterson, principal with Oz Architecture. Can everyone hear me?
I can, and before you begin, first you've got 10 minutes to make your presentation, and please give us your address as well for the records.
Yes, I'm Rick Peterson with Oz Architecture. Our address is 3003 Larimer in Denver. And I'm joined by Pat, I believe Pat Callahan is on the phone, on the call, and he's our client. He'll speak for about a minute or so, and then I'll conclude. We'll keep it within 10 minutes.
Great, thank you.
Am I muted still?
You are fine.
Oh, excellent. And now, but my real self isn't on that picture. So
None of us show our real photos.
can you see me now?
Yeah,
Yeah, for real see me?
I'm just seeing a headshot.
Oh, Jesus.
That's okay. As long
Okay.
as we can hear you, we're good.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Pat.
All right, so I'll get started. So my name is Pat Callahan. I founded Urban Renaissance Group in 2006. We've spent a lot of time in our careers both on major renovations as well as ground up development. We've experienced an office, residential, and hotel. And so this project, which we assembled the land for over 2 different purchases over the last 8 years, with the eye of doing something like we're proposing here. Blending historic with new, which we always find exciting and challenging at the same time. So we have been in Denver for some time. I lived personally in Denver for about 5 years. We operate in Seattle, Portland, and Denver. And we have several assets in Denver, including Market Center and downtown at 17th and Market. So we appreciate your taking the time to look at this today, and certainly we will listen to all your feedback through this process. And I hope to build a great project at the end of the day. So thanks for your time.
So speaking of feedback, we too have appreciated working with Crystal and staff over the last 3 months and 2 rounds of feedback, and look forward to continuing getting your feedback. Wanted to just offer clarification, and mostly clarification and acknowledgement of staff comments over about 4 basic realms here in the next few minutes. First is the Blake Street garage entry proposal and why we are continuing to propose that. The second would be a clarification to the height, as Crystal mentioned. We've been showing it a couple different ways, and we will clarify that to be consistent. And then the third basic realm is the character of the windows and mullions and such. So with that, if you could advance one, that would be great. Thank you. So in terms of the Blake Street garage entrance, as Crystal mentioned, we're proposing it coming from Blake to the ground floor of the building. And we would normally agree that we would ideally come in from the alley. But we wanted to clarify that the alley is to be vacated. Our intent is to vacate the alley, and we're working this on a parallel or concurrent time frame. Just a reminder, Pat and his company are the owners of all the land in back. That's the 1561 and the 2399. And the intent and what we're most excited about is to create a truly vibrant pedestrian district linked by a vacated alley. And with that in place, then that is the reason simply why we were proposing to enter the garage alley of 2325 from Blake. It's as simple as that. If you could go to the next one. There were a couple of staff comments on the position of the building in relation to the property line. We are proposing to hold it back just about 3 feet to allow a little more cushion to what will be a very, very tight pedestrian realm and right-of-way as a result of the proposed flow line from transportation to right now it's kind of a no man's land with no curb, and this is allowing for a pedestrian realm, but we thought that if we could back off just about 3 feet, then we could get the kind of a little more active space, and then also outswinging doors that would potentially feed the retail that's along the frontage, which was mentioned. Is wanted to point that out basically in this slide. If you go to the next one, if you don't mind, thank you. And this is just for reference, the frontage and the entry. It's true that we are proposing a chamfered entry that you can see in and around the neighborhood to highlight this pedestrian flow, this paseo or passageway that would take us into this very vital and revitalized pedestrian vacated alley that will really be the nexus for the entire development. And next, thank you. And here again, were a number of the precedents of that kind of treatment of the chamfered corner. These next few slides we'll go through very quickly to clarify the height, and how we're measuring it is now consistent and is 58'3". And as staff has mentioned, it does seem to be consistent with the heights in the district. Next. And these next few just use that 58'3" consistently. We were measuring it a couple different ways, and is now consistently measured. Next. And next. These are just going around the whole building with that consistent 58'3". Okay, and now this one is, again, really appreciate the feedback. This is more of a clarification, and we really look forward to refining these based on the feedback as we would ideally come out of the mass form and scale phase 1 and go into more of the detailed. Not to say that that doesn't matter, and right now we again appreciate the feedback. Wanted to maybe just point out that the ground floor really is where we're proposing a mullion pattern that is more consistent with the pedestrian scale, and also a really nice kind of water coursing that is taken off of the 2301 building that we're continuing across. So it's that horizontality that is the intent to enhance the pedestrian scale. Okay, and then you can see this, oh, I can even, and I should be doing this. Sorry, I'm going to annotate just a second. And I don't think it's allowing me to annotate. Anyway, you can see that horizontal striping of the existing historic building and how we're picking up from that and continuing it on the facade and the window mullions down low. This was just to clarify, even though staff has said that our building width is consistent within the district, here are just to emphasize that we believe that is that's our opinion as well. And here are 3 local cases where it is rather consistent with the width of the buildings in the district. And I think that concludes, if you go one more. Yeah. So again, eager for your feedback and any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Pat. Commissioners, have you any questions for our applicants after their presentation? Okay, it doesn't look like it. We have no comments. You did such a great job that they don't have any questions for you. Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Pat. So we will now, commissioners, do you have any questions before we go into deliberation? Have you any questions for the applicant? Oh, no, we need to do public
comment. Yep.
Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Sorry, guys. Are there any people from the public that wish to make a comment, Jen?
I don't see any hands raised, but if you would like to make any comment, please use the hand raise button at the bottom of your screen. And I don't see anyone on the phone.
Nobody on the phone. Okay.
But nope, no hands raised at the moment.
Okay. Since there aren't any public comments, since commissioners, have you any questions for the staff before we head into deliberation? It does not look like it. Crystal, did you have any redirect, any further comment?
Nope, I'm good.
Great. Thank you very much, Crystal. Great job. Alrighty, commissioners, let's go on into deliberation at this point now. What are you thinking? What are some of your initial thoughts? And we, keeping the guidelines in mind.
I think Crystal hit it very well as far as this proposed structure and its relation to the guidelines. What strikes me most of all is the arcade entrance, because if you've ever tried to cross in front of one of those, you've got a pedestrian and a safety issue. So they're widening the space to make it more pedestrian friendly, I think. And then you're going to have cars coming and going in and out of that spot. That's a accident waiting to happen, in my opinion. And as well as the requirements for the mass form and context of that street view, I'm inclined to agree with Crystal on her outcome of this project. I'm also seeing, a pretty harsh contrast between arched windows and square windows that are, considerably larger scale. And that's pretty much why I'm in agreement with staff.
Okay, great, George, thank you. Anybody else? Anne, great, thank you.
So I think it's really clear in the application that the applicant's desire is to be a good neighbor to the existing buildings on the site. But to me, it seems really kind of hostile when you get down to it. Well, I think one of the issues is, and we've come across this before, all of the other buildings are actually true bearing wall buildings. And this building, especially the arcade, kind of screams out that it's that the brick is just a facade. And I think that when you say the word arcade, it has a certain connotation to it. And this is actually the second arcade we've had. We had another one. I'm sorry, our historian isn't here, but this is actually not an arcade, because an arcade goes in the opposite direction. But I think there's an idea of arcade that actually could be a great transition, but it would have to have a great deal more masonry in it to kind of make the transition from these bearing wall buildings that have, if you look at the figure ground, they have much more meat to them than they do actual openings to this building, the new building, which has got much more, void to it than brick. And I think that there's probably a way in that kind of device that you could make that transition. And I'm actually also have to say, much as I really love the compatibility demonstration, it's a little strange to show a corner compatibility not at a corner. So either the arcade isn't there and it really is a corner, or it's not really a corner and that's not the appropriate image, I think. But as I said, I think, and I agree with George, I think having the parking coming right off in the middle of the facade doesn't really work very well. Just as a friendly comment, weirdly, I think if the arcade went in the other direction, you'd have much better shot at it, because there could be an opening to get to the back and an opening to get to the parking, but that's just a friendly comment. But to me, I think the biggest problem is it doesn't even remotely try to be anything that looks like a bearing wall building or pick up any of those details. And so it's sort of jarring to see it kind of hovering over that little building.
Thank you, Anne. Gary?
I agree with what Anne is saying. I think the cantilever corner, even though it's supported with columns, is really what interrupts this building's compatibility with the context of the adjacent historic building. That void just, the fact that there's no masonry at the corner, and that it seems like it's, I think Anne said it best, it's not really an arcade. It doesn't meet the definition of an arcade. And I know they're trying to open the streetscape up to a potential pedestrian-friendly alley. The trouble is, I think, without seeing a whole project, which is a dilemma, because the other half of the project's not in the district, without seeing how it all works together, it's kind of hard to justify this particular opening from street to back where it touches the existing historic building. If this throughway was located in a different place on the facade, I think it'd be more successful. I really think there needs to be masonry at that corner adjacent to the historic building. I'm also disturbed by the parking entrance off the street. It's unusual for the area. And I agree with staff comments that this is an interruption with the way the building engages the street.
Yeah, I agree with that, Gary. It's almost from the facade of the building, it almost looks like you're looking at the back of the building because of the parking access there, in my view. Larry, did you have any thoughts before we go ask for a motion? Thanks.
Yeah, I think I agree with everything everybody else has said so far. And I think that, I just wanted to emphasize the garage entrance as well. I think that seems like a questionable trade-off for the enhanced pedestrian environment of the alley to sort of detract from the pedestrian experience of Blake Street. And so, not that it's our purview to, discuss the vacating of the alley, but I just bring it up as a question of, I guess, in the sense of how it, from the guidelines, how it ties into existing development patterns. I think this project attempts to kind of break from existing development patterns in a pretty significant way that I agree with the staff commentary on it.
Okay, great. All right, Larry, thank you very much. It sounds like we're all pretty much in agreement. Who would like to make the motion?
I'll go for it.
Go for it, George.
Madam Chair, I move to deny application 2022-COA-283 for the demolition of the non-contributing addition to 2301 Blake Street and the new infill structure at 2325 Blake Street per design guideline 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.4, 4.8, 4.18, 4.21, 4.23, 4.24, and 5.15. The presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
George, thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that. And I didn't hear the inclusion of guideline 4.20. Was I not listening, or did that get missed?
You're correct. That was missed.
So I'd like to make a friendly amendment to reference to guideline 4.20.
All right, Gary. So
Concur.
Gary, you did second the motion, and then you offered a friendly amendment. George, do you accept the friendly amendment?
Absolutely.
All right, terrific. Thanks, everybody. Let's go ahead and vote then. George?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
And Julie also votes aye. So the motion, or this the motion is denied. Or the motion passes, the project is denied, the application is denied. Sorry about that. We are moving on to our next project for design review. It's 185 Corona Street, Alamo, Placita. And it's Jesse.
All right, so this
Jesse.
is 185 Corona Street, constructed in 1945. This is a contributing building to the Alamo Placita Historic District. I would point out that the period of significance for this historic district is 1889 to 1942. So this by date of construction falls outside of that period of significance, but the designation for this historic district calls this building out specifically as a contributing structure, even though it is outside of that period of significance. So did want to make that very clear at the beginning of this presentation. So the applicant is requesting to, additionally on this property, there is an addition off the back of the building that doesn't show up until the 1961 Sanborn map. The applicant is requesting to do window replacement of both historic and non-historic windows on the structure. Some of those windows are in that addition that I just pointed out. Okay. There it goes. My mouse is being touchy today, so apologies in advance. The applicant is requesting to replace 16 windows on the front, sides, and back of the house and convert 2 basement windows into egress windows. 12 of the windows are located on the main level of the house, and 6 of the windows are located at the basement level. The applicant is requesting to alter windows B1, shown on the left-hand side of the site plan, and B8, shown on the right-hand side of the site plan. They're going to be converted into egress windows. So windows B1 and B8 are located on the side of the house and are called out in the historic window assessment as non-historic windows. Ten of the windows on that house are historic windows that are being requested for replacement, 2 of which are historic glass block windows. That's window 1-12 and window 1-16. The applicant had the windows assessed by a window professional. The windows conditions matrix shows several of the operator handles the movement mechanisms as 3 advanced deterioration. Staff wanted to reach out to that window assessor to get a little more information on that deterioration level. The assessor did state that all the historic windows exhibit conditions typical of steel casement windows of this era. These include failing glazing putty, failing exterior sealants, operational issues associated with overpainting and caulking and sealing, and broken crank hardware. He did assure staff that these are all in repairable condition and easily repairable condition. The crank mechanisms being the major reason for that 3 category can be replaced and can be easily replaced. Okay, so of the 8 non-historic windows proposed for replacement, 3 are in the 1961 rear addition and 4 are at the basement level. Here are images of all of those windows. And those are called out specifically in the window assessment as non-historic windows. So the applicant is proposing to replace the 16 windows with aluminum clad wood windows. Divided light windows will be simulated divided lights with the spacer bar. Staff is recommending, so before I get to that, as you can see here on the screen, the proposed windows are have a significantly different profile from the existing steel casement windows on the structure. It will be quite thicker at the mullions and will have thicker muntins on them, which will significantly alter the appearance of these windows. Staff do feel that this era of home and these style steel casement windows are character windows. So we are recommending conditional approval of this application with the condition that the historic windows be repaired and maintained as pointed out by the window assessor rather than replace, citing guideline 2.14 and 2.16. And that's it. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask.
Jesse, thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions for Jesse? It doesn't look like a Jesse. All righty. Can we get the applicants to join our group? Hi. It looks like we've got an applicant. The applicant's here. But it looks like you're muted.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you now. You've got 10 minutes to give your presentation and talk to us about your project. But I need your names and your address before you begin, please.
Okay. My name is Zeb Buki. I am the estimator and permit extraordinaire for basements and beyond. We're at 921 North Santa Fe Drive.
Great, thank you very much.
So we are proposing to replace these windows per the request of the homeowner. Due to the woefully inefficient nature of steel casement windows and the struggles with heat and cold during the extreme months of summer and winter. And I believe Casey is on the line, or I don't see her on here, but.
Well, can you guys hear us?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we can't hear you. Casey, before you, if this is Casey, please give us your name, full name and address, please, before you begin.
Okay. I'm actually here with my husband as well. My name is Casey Mason. Our address is 185 North Corona Street in Denver.
I'm Justin Troach. My address as well is 185 North Corona Street.
Great. Thank you.
So my parents bought this house, I believe, in 1985. So I grew up in this house. And when my parents passed away, I inherited it as an only child. And so now my husband and I are living in this house and now raising our daughter in it. So we've got third generation in this house currently. As long as I can remember, the windows in this house have been a pain. Also, please tell me if I talk too quickly. I get nervous and I speed up sometimes.
You're doing just fine. Not to worry, Casey.
Thank you. They've always been a pain, and I know that even before I experienced what a pain they were, I would always hear my parents cursing to each other and at the windows about the windows because of how terrible they were in extreme weather. For instance, in the current slide, you can see one of the window units has a little air conditioner in it. We have another one in what was the main bedroom. And the leak from those was always terrible. And then also the single pane is awful to live with. I think Zeb can attest to this. When I learned that I had to replace the historic doorknobs in the interior of the house, I almost cried because I'm all about maintaining the originality and the uniqueness of an historic house. I love living in an historic house, and sometimes maybe living in an historic neighborhood is a little bit of a pain, but first and foremost, I want to maintain the originality of the house. With that said, I also want to be comfortable in the house that we live in. And these windows make that difficult for a few reasons. One of the biggest reasons is that you can see in some of these windows, I don't have control over the slide, but if you slide through some of the windows or some of the slides, you can see that some of the windows have storm windows on the outside of them. For instance, on the top, sorry, my cat keeps jumping on the table. On the top, yes, right there, you can see that has a storm window. Those don't do anything to keep out heat or cold. So we still have to put plastic on all of the windows. And living in a pretty affluent neighborhood and being surrounded by $1 million houses, it's kind of like a universal joke that I still have to put plastic on my windows in the winter, especially living in a state that has 75-degree weathers in February, which means if I want to open a window, I'd have to take the plastic down, open the window for the day, and then the next day when it goes from 75 to blizzarding, I'd have to put the plastic up again. It's honestly a pain, especially with a toddler who thinks it's really funny to pull off the plastic when you're trying to put it up. So that's the main reason we'd like to replace these windows. Another huge reason is that we have a lot of noise pollution. We live on a very busy street, and we live on a street that, I don't know the jargon, but it's an emergency street. So we have fire trucks and ambulances and cop cars zooming through Corona probably every day. And while you can get used to it, our toddler isn't used to it. And we also have neighbors who like to throw parties in their backyards during the summer. And the last thing I want to do is go out there and be like, hey, please stop. My toddler's trying to sleep. Unless you want to babysit my toddler when she hasn't had any sleep and she's cranky, please turn off your music and go inside. I specifically had to do that with my neighbors on the other side, who simply just want to have a good time with his teenage friends. So that's another reason. Unfortunately, the picture isn't in this presentation, but on the interior of one of the windows in what was the main bedroom, we have duct tape around the window. And the reason is because moths kept coming in and out of that window, even when the window itself was closed. So it's another cosmic joke that we have plastic and duct tape on the inside of what could be $1 million house. I did, Jesse, watch your presentation. I think it was last year, the year before, maybe 2020, about preserving historic windows and repairing them rather than replacing them. And I got a lot of good information on that. It was very, very informational. But in terms of saving money on efficiency, I've lived with storm windows and I can attest that they just, maybe new ones might work better, but I've been doing my research and there still aren't any storm windows that I can put on crank windows, or I don't know the jargon, but on these crank windows that don't make the house look a little tackier comparative to the other houses on our block and in our neighborhood. And so I think replacing the windows could save us a good bit of money for efficiency with our energy bill. Our last energy bill when we were living in the house was nearly $400. And so I'd like to see that go down a little bit by replacing these windows. And then I think lastly, light pollution. When we move back into the house as a stay-at-home parent, I'd like to go back to work. My work is, I'm a portrait artist. So I draw portraits of animals and people. I've noticed that doing that in this house for a long period of time, the light pollution because of the single pane can actually warp or ruin these portraits that I'm doing. And that's kind of my livelihood. So if I'm living in a house that is in a pretty affluent neighborhood and I can't even draw in it, it's always going to irk me when I could have had a chance to replace these windows to help with that as well. I think that's all I have to say about why we would love to replace these windows. And again, I want you all to know that it's so important to me to make this house as original as possible. But again, I really want to live in this house that's original, but be comfortable living in it rather than cursing at my windows my entire life like my parents did while they were living here. I think that's all I have to say. Anything, Justin? Okay.
All right.
I have something to add.
Sure.
The detail you saw from Pella on the window, it's not a very good representation of the thickness of the muntins. I don't know how to get a better detail at this point, but I don't think they are that they look, the vertical members are that thick. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
Okay, thanks. If that's all from the applicants, let's find out, commissioners, do you have any questions for the applicants? Gary.
This might sound like an impertinent question, but what is the heating system in this house? Is it hot water or steam, or is it forced air?
Zeb, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, forced air.
Forced air. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? It doesn't look like it. Thank you very much, applicants. Jen, are there any public, it's time for public comments if there are any. Are there anybody that would like to make a public comment? Please let us know now.
Yeah, you use the hand raise function. I don't see anyone with their hands raised. There's one person on the phone. And if you are joining by phone, press *9 on your phone. And they have not done so.
Okay, great. All right. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Jesse before we go into deliberation? Anne?
I have a question. This is, as I understand it, this is a contributing house, is that correct?
Correct.
And as for this, and this is also sort of not in our purview, are tax credits available for the repair of the windows?
Correct.
Thank you.
And I was going to follow up with a quick rebut here.
Sure.
I really appreciate, Casey, you watching the video on my presentation for historic window repair. I would highly recommend repair rather than replacement. A lot of times whenever these windows are properly repaired and maintained over time, that will increase energy efficiency. You can replace defunct or dysfunctional single pane glazing. I know you'd have to put single pane glazing back in these openings as it is a steel casement window, but that can just the repair of the windows alone will greatly improve your energy efficiency and sound efficiency, and as well as having modern interior or exterior storms for these windows would help to increase that, increase the energy efficiency and soundproofing even more while maintaining the historic windows. And all of that would qualify for a preservation tax credit. Currently, our tax credit for residential structures is 20%, but because we're in a state of emergency due to the pandemic, there's an additional 5%. So total percent of 25% tax credit on this structure.
Great. Jesse, thank you for letting us know that. All right, any other questions for Jesse before we go into deliberation? I don't see any. I see a lot of shaking heads. Okay, then let us go into deliberation. Commissioners, what are your thoughts? Gary?
Having lived in a similar styled house with similar windows, I can understand the dilemma. And while I was living in said house, never considered replacing the windows because it is such an important part of the character of the building. Since I moved out of that house, those windows were replaced, and it was a significant deterioration of the character occurred. So I agree with staff's recommendations. As a comment, I would not oppose replacement of the steel windows with a thermally broken aluminum window that replicates the original sight lines of the steel window. It can't really be done with a metal clad wood window because all the profiles are much wider. And putting in wider stiles and rails and mutton bars just really depreciates the character that the original windows contribute to the building. So it is a dilemma, but there is a solution, I think, and that would be a replacement of the original windows with windows that replicate the original windows function, sight lines, all the widths of the stiles and rails and mutton bars with a thermally broken aluminum window with insulating glass. That's not a cheap solution, but it is a solution. But since that is not being proposed by this application, I am going to support the staff's recommendations that the original windows be repaired rather than replaced.
Thank you, Gary. I see some nodding heads. Anne, did you want to say anything? No? Okay. George?
Well, having lived through repairing lots and lots of windows, I would first ask if, and I had no idea about the thermally broken casement looking windows that Gary mentioned. I was just going to stop at internals or inside storms. But I would like to ask the other commissioners, should we Or do we need to put in separate language for the egress windows? I don't think that the stylistic issues of a window that is there to save lives would necessarily have to fall under the same purview as your living room window. So, well, Jesse, what do you want to say?
I was just going to say that this is conditional approval. If you approve it conditionally, the applicant would have to meet the conditions before the approval could be issued. If that means removing the historic windows from the application, then they would be able to move forward with the replacement and addition of the egress windows and replacement of the non-historic windows.
So we could make a condition that would specify repair of the above grade windows and let them and let the design of egress windows be separated from that, but part of the same conditional approval.
So it would just be the conditional approval as written, and they would have to meet that condition. One way that they could meet that condition would be to remove the historic windows from the application request. And that would meet the condition. And then they would have approval for their egress window and replacement of the non-historic windows on the structure.
Okay, but that means rewriting the whole.
No, it doesn't, George.
No?
No,
Okay.
I don't think so. Because if you approve it, the condition is at the bottom of the suggested motion that the historic windows be replaced and maintained rather than replaced. Or repaired and maintained, I'm sorry, rather than replaced.
Okay. Okay.
So I think the current suggested motion is adequate.
Excellent. Oh, okay, perfect. Then
We're
then
good.
there's lots of ways to go then. But I did have some concern about egress windows. So
Sure, I understand that. Any other comments from commissioners? Then do I hear a motion from the floor?
Madam Chair, I move to approve application number 2022-COA-276 for the replacement of windows at 185 Corona Street as per design guidelines 2.14, 2.16, presented testimony, submitted documentation and information provided in the staff report with the following condition: that the historic windows be repaired and maintained rather than replaced.
Gary, thank you. Do I hear a second? Oh,
Yeah.
Ann?
I have a friendly amendment, which is to say I move to conditionally approve.
Okay. I think
You
we-
need
Go
a
ahead,
second
Jen.
first, yeah.
Yeah, we need a second before we do a friendly amendment. Does somebody second it?
I'll second.
George seconded it, and then Ann made a friendly amendment to conditionally approve.
I agree. I said conditionally in my mind.
We knew that. We just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
George, do you also accept the friendly amendment? You're muted.
I do, yes.
Okay, excellent. Then let's go ahead and take a vote then. George?
Aye.
Thank you. Gary?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
And Julie also votes aye. Thank you very much, commissioners. The the application has been conditionally approved. And we are moving on now to 2236 Hooker Street in the Witter Coffield Historic District. And I believe that's Abby.
Okay, so the applicant here is proposing to construct a single-story rear addition and a detached garage, as well as making some modifications to the fenestration of the historic residence and installing an AC unit, which will be located in front of the addition. The addition will be located at the northeast corner of the house, so you can see it here on this site plan with the diagonal hatching, and then you can also see the location of the proposed garage there at the rear. So the addition will project just over 5 feet into the side yard. but has been designed to have a minimal impact on the original residence. As you can see on this site plan, with the addition of a garage to the lot as well, and there's currently no garage on the site, there really is limited space to put an addition. So we feel like, given the size constraints and the small lot size, that this seems like reasonable, placement in order to get both the addition as well as a detached garage. And that garage then will be located, you can see there, kind of from a side alley. Okay, so here is the front of the house showing then the section of the addition that will be visible then, or kind of from the side, certainly set back, so that's going to decrease some of the visibility, but you can see there that projection into the side yard. So the addition will feature a simple front gable roof and will be clad in horizontal siding with shingles at the gable ends to tie into the shingles found on the historic residence. So staff's only concern really with the design of the addition is this window that you see here that is facing the street. There are no other windows with the same proposed multi-light configuration that you see here on this addition. There aren't any other multi-light windows like this on the house. So we don't find the use of a multi-light window here to be appropriate. We generally ask also that just additions generally be simplified, so adding something that's more complex, that is more complex than any of the windows found in the house, does not appear to meet the guidelines. So staff would recommend that instead this window be replaced with a simple 1/1 sash window that would fit better with the other windows on the house and be simpler for use on the addition. So here you see the addition from the side, as well as then the proposed changes to this north elevation of the house. So on the north elevation, the applicant is proposing to infill an existing door, infill a window, and then add a new window opening just next to the one they are filling in. The openings on this side elevation do have some public visibility from the sidewalk. And the window to be enclosed does feature a rusticated stone sill and a brick arch. And staff finds that that window does contribute to the historic character of the house. Staff are concerned with the cumulative impact of the multiple alterations that are occurring on this elevation, with both the infill of the door and the infill of the window, and then the new window. So staff would recommend, reducing, kind of the changes here, and, maybe just infilling the door, but keeping the window, and to adjust that. And so staff would recommend that on the proposed window infill and creation of a new window opening be removed from the proposal. And this would be based on guideline 2.14 to maintain the pattern and proportion of historic window openings. You can see then to the rear, you have the garage. So the garage is extremely simple in design. So basically just simple square with a flat roof and horizontal siding. So staff found that compatible with the neighborhood. So here you have the rear then of the house. You can see a little bit more there, that gable roof form of the simple single-story addition. So also then on the north elevation, the applicant is proposing to the applicant is proposing on this rear elevation to have a new window opening and a partial infill of an existing window. Staff is not as concerned with these since these are at the rear and will not be readily visible. The applicant is also proposing that 2 egress windows will be created at historic basement window locations. Though it is unclear on the application whether exactly how the existing opening will be treated, whether or not it's just going to be dropping down the existing, width, and whether or not the brick arches that are located at the historic basement window openings, whether those brick arches will be retained. So you can see here on the lower level there on the left, that is one of the new egress windows that is being proposed. And since this one is at the rear of the house, it will not have any public visibility. So here you see the other side elevation. So again, that garage there to the rear where it will be accessed from the side alley, and then the other side of that addition. And then you see the other proposed egress window. So this egress window here will be readily visible because it is very close to the front of the house, as you can see in this photo here. And so staff does have some concerns with just the treatment and design of this egress window since it will have visibility. So you can see here just some some street views. You can get a sense of the visibility and the closeness of this egress window to the front. So there you see a street view. You can see the egress window there just behind the tree, and it's right on the alley. So that provides additional, makes it more visible, and you can see the egress window there. Excuse me. So currently the design for the egress window, the applicant is proposing to use metal, steel well liners. Staff would recommend for the egress well that is right next to the front, that instead a egress well design that will blend better be used. Staff would suggest something like a brick liner, and have an egress well that really minimally goes above, that projects above ground level, just in order to kind of make that blend more with the building and be less conspicuous where it is located right next to the building. That is pretty much it. So, so that is, sorry, that's it. So overall, staff find that the design of the addition and the garage are compatible with the historic residents in the district, but we do have a few concerns. So based on that, staff is recommending several conditions. So we would recommend approval with the conditions that a simple 1/1 sash window be used on the west wall of the addition facing the street. That the proposed window infill and new window opening on the north elevation be eliminated from the proposal. That the brick arches be retained at the basement egress openings and just be dropped down from the existing windows. And then we would also recommend that the applicant use a brick or concrete lined egress well with a minimal above grade projection at the south egress well that will be visible.
Abby, thank you very much. Commissioners, have you any questions for Abby at this point? No? Doesn't look like it. Okay, great. Abby, thank you very much. Can we get the applicant?
Hi all. Hopefully
Hi
you
there.
can hear me.
Hi, this is to the applicant. Just before you start, you've got 10 minutes to give your presentation. Before you start, we need your name and your address for the record, please.
Sounds good. My name is Michael Beasley. I work for Zaga Design Group, and our address is 3630 West 32nd Avenue, number 2. So Abigail, thank you as always. You always do a great job in reviewing and giving everyone the information for us. As she stated, this project is a rear addition that leans toward the north setback due to the property being slightly smaller to keep our clients with a yard in the back a little bit. The main reason for this is that the family wants to have more space within their house and they want to move the stairs to their basement. On top of this, we do recognize the changes and conditions that are being brought up by the Landmark Committee at the moment. The window wells, we will gladly switch these over to a concrete or brick base and change those details. The window on the north side facing the main street, we will gladly change this over as well to a 1/1 sash. I do have one comment, and I am not sure if it's something we can propose or not with the infill window. Is there any possibility, and you guys can tell me if this is a possibility or not right away, if the window that's being infilled can be infilled, but have the brick sill and arch over top convert over to the new window? Reason I say this is because in the plans, which were not shown on the presentation, the kitchen is behind that, and we would lose significant upper cabinet space if we have to keep this window as is. But we understand if this isn't a possibility, we can figure out how to make it work. Nothing was really mentioned at all involving siding. We just want to reiterate that the lap siding is to mimic the brick. We are keeping with the fish scale on the gable roof, kept to the same design. We wanted to make sure the addition was also secondary to the house. With that, it's pretty simple for us. Abigail does a great job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could I do have just one question for you. Could you, the infill window, could you ask us, or could you explain one more time what it is that you're asking?
Yes, it crossed my mind when Abigail was going over hers when she was showing the picture of that side of the house. One down from the cursor. So on this, the elevation on the right here, the windows are fairly similar in size. If there is any possibility of using that brick sill or stone sill and the brick above from the infill to mimic it, where the proposed window is transferring just to the left. If this is a possibility from the committee to discuss, I would love to hear thoughts on it, to be able to infill that and then mimic it with that sill. I understand that we'll still have to indent the brick if we infill to recognize that there was a window there, but just curious about the possibility of doing that so we can have some cabinets on that wall on the inside.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that. Are there other commissioners that have any questions for the applicant? Larry.
Yeah, just wanted to know with regarding the egress windows at the basement level, do you know what the opening width is on those?
Not off the top of my head. I do know they will meet egress code.
Okay, that was my main question. Yes, could you retain the arches and be able to meet egress requirements? Thank you.
We will make sure to have that detail included in the conditional resubmittal to Abigail.
Thank you. Any other questions for the applicant? I'm not seeing any. Then we'll go on to find out if there are any public comments. If you're on the computer, use your little hand raise function. Let us know.
I don't see any hands raised now.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Jen. All righty. Commissioners, before we go into deliberation, do you have any other questions for Abigail? No? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Then let us go into deliberation, commissioners. What does everybody think? And maybe we could just discuss the question that he's asked about the window, the infill window that he'd like to use to move the sill and the stone. What's everybody thinking?
I think kitchen cabinets are a quality of life issue. I would be fine if you want to move the window opening over and recognize on the exterior where the window had been.
Gary. Thanks, George. Gary?
I'd like to partially agree with what George is saying. You know, I would agree with infilling the window, but leaving the existing original sill and head details there as historic evidence of the window. But to do that, I would oppose adding a new window. I think the new window is added because there's a sink there. Well, the kitchen arrangement could be altered so that the sink can go under the existing window further over. I know that might interfere with the perfect triangle, but I don't think that that's a sacrifice too large to make in order to retain as much of the original exterior as possible.
What does everybody else think about that? Anne?
I completely agree with Gary.
Okay, short and sweet.
Yeah.
I love it. Larry?
Likewise. And with the question, I guess, to the rest of the commissioners of if I understand you correctly, Gary, you're saying to, infill the existing window that's right next to the door with a kind of blank panel within the existing opening. And is that something that we have precedent for approving, that sort of thing?
We haven't done it while I've been a commissioner. Gary, somebody who's been.
Well, I'm assuming that the infill would occur with brick that's slightly recessed.
Yeah.
So that the window appears the opening appears as a ghost opening. The sill would remain there, and the detail of the arch above the window would remain there. And I think there is precedent for infilling windows in a like manner.
Yeah, we've approved it as staff before in that manner, just with a recess. Usually it's about an inch recess.
All right.
Okay.
Does everybody agree? Oh, go ahead, Larry.
Oh, no, that was it. I agree with Gary and George's thoughts on that.
Okay, great. So does everybody's on board with infilling the window, but leaving the sill and the eyebrow or the arch over the window where it is right now, so that it shows that it like a ghost marking. That works for me. It sounds like you all are also agreeing that you would rather not have a new window punched into the hole and instead use the current window that's already there. Is that correct? Then that
works for me. Yeah.
Okay, then that is something that whoever makes the motion would have to add to the motion. Because it looks like in number 2, we are okay with the proposed window infill, but not with the new window opening. If that's correct. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and I just say you might want to add to the motion then to, to retain the sill and the header and have an inset. So whoever's writing the motion, if, based on your deliberation, it sounds like that's where you're going. So you might want to specify that in the motion too.
I think that's a great idea. Thanks, Abby.
So, Madam Chair,
Gary.
I move to conditionally approve application number 2022-COA-268 for the alterations and addition at 2236 Hooker Street as per design guidelines 2.14, 2.18, 3.1 through 3.3, 3.6, 3.7, 4.18, and 4.19. Character defining features for the Whittier Coffield Historic District. Presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the following conditions. Use a simple 1/1 sash window on the west wall of the addition. Eliminate the new window opening on the north elevation. At the proposed window infill on the north elevation, retain the original sill and head details and infill with recessed brick masonry panel to match the existing exterior. And retain brick arches at basement egress openings and use a brick or concrete lined egress well with a minimum above grade projection at the south egress well.
Gary, thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
George seconded it. Thank you. Let's go ahead and take a vote then. George. Oh, Anne, I'm sorry.
I would like to make a friendly amendment.
All right.
In condition number 3, you mentioned the window, but not the door. I'm sorry, is it hard to hear me?
Oh, we can hear you now. Mhm.
You mentioned the window, but not the door. And my friendly amendment is that the door opening should be added to that same condition.
All right, Gary.
I'm a little confused
Yeah.
because I was reading the proposed motion and it doesn't talk about the door. Is that something that should have been in the motion originally?
Jen, you popped up. Did you have something to?
Well, I popped up because I thought it was condition 2 to eliminate the new window opening on the north elevation. And then Gary, you talked about what that is like. And I think that section was where the door was. Is that right?
So I was going to say, I think it's just that I didn't mention the door because they said that they were going to have, I think, a smaller recess here already, and they didn't specify the arch. I think what Anne is saying, just if we want to make that same condition and say to make sure that the arch is also retained when you're infilling that, and that it used the same inset, so basically that both infills at both the window and the door, that those infills be treated the same.
Okay.
I agree with that. How do we, should we start over?
I think you could just say, you said at window infill, so you could say like at window and door infill, retain
Yes, okay.
original, detail, and I think then that would work.
I'll agree to that change to the motion.
To the friendly amendment?
Yes.
Okay, thanks, Gary. George, do you agree with that friendly amendment?
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right, Abby, thanks for clarifying. All right, let's take a vote then. George?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
Anne?
Aye.
And Julie also votes aye. Thank you very much to the applicant and to Abby. On to our next one, which is also in Witter Coffield, 3025 Newton Street. And Abby is up again.
Just as a heads up, it's not that there was a typo on the first agenda. It's actually in the Wolf Place Historic District.
Never mind. Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying. All righty. Is it still Abby?
Yes.
Okay, Abby, thank you.
Okay, so up today next is a mass form and context review for a new single family infill residence. So the blue circle is just here to show you the location. So that is the house that will be replaced. And that, it's kind of showing you the streetscape where it's going to fit into the block. So the existing residence there was previously approved by the commission for demolition based on the approval of a replacement plan. So this is following that process and is the next step to move forward. And that's the one you had approved it based to, changes that, made it non-contributing to been determined earlier. Okay. I can get this. There we go. Okay, so here is the proposed infill. So the proposed infill is 2 stories plus a basement with a mostly rectangular form. The proposed infill draws inspiration from 4 square residences within the Wolf Place Historic District. Features drawn from the district's 4 square buildings include the hipped roof with deep overhanging eaves, the hipped dormer centered on the facade, the full width porch with a hipped roof on the facade, the boxy form, and the side chimney. The applicant has worked extensively with staff on the development of a compatible infill design for this lot. The applicant explored several design options before deciding that a simplified version of a foursquare was the best fit for their needs, the site, and district compatibility. The applicant has studied other foursquare residences in the district and included analysis with their application. The applicant has also met with the RNO and incorporated their feedback into the design as well. And the RNO is recommending approval, and you have their additional, their comments, but all of the RNO concerns have been addressed. They had some initial concerns; those have all been addressed, and you have those in the packet. So here you have photographs of some of the other foursquares within the district. Some of these are located just across the street from this proposed site. And then you have up at the top, you see there the streetscape showing kind of how this is going to fit into that side of the block and showing the alignment with adjacent properties. So as you can see, it really is, though it is a foursquare versus some of the other Queen Anne influences and classic cottages you see on this block, it really does show good alignment with the block. So the entry and the porch location fit the district patterns, floor to ceiling heights align. The overall building height as proposed is 30 feet, and this aligns with the adjacent historic structure at 3023 Newton. And the facade reflects typical portions, though it is wider than some of the other properties on this block. The width is typical of other foursquare that you find within the district. And, it has the size of the lot needed for the additional width. This is a double lot, so it has the space for it to kind of still fit proportionally, staff feels, within the block pattern. The infill does also incorporate a raised foundation, which is characteristic of the block in the district as well. So here you see the site plan. So you can see it's kind of offset from on the lot, pushed towards the south side, but this is the same kind of placement that the existing house had too. So this is a kind of historic placement of the residence on the lot. And then you'll see there's an existing garage that was just completed, that was previously approved by the commission, that has been completed and is located at the rear of the lot. So here you see the facade and the side. So on the facade, entrance is located off center, which is characteristic of other foursquares. Then you see on the side, it includes a side porch. So this is a kind of contemporary addition to the foursquare design. It's kind of taking advantage of the fact that it does have a side yard due to the double width lot. This is also kind of looking back to the previous building before, due to the deteriorated condition of the building, that they needed to move forward with infill as opposed to constructing the addition that was originally proposed by the proposed and approved by the commission. That had also included a side porch. So that property, the commission had approved putting a side porch there on that large side yard. So that's a feature that the applicant would really like to retain and still have that porch onto the side yard. Staff feels that it's successful here because it's kind of pushed back and adds a contemporary touch to what is otherwise pretty much a simplified version of a foursquare, and that kind of adds a contemporary porch there with large doors on to the side yard. So here you see the other side and rear. So here then just an overview. So staff finds pretty much everything, the fenestration form, mass, we all find to be compatible with district patterns and with other foursquares in the district. So design's a simplified version of a foursquare, which is typical in the district. We think the materials and details will be really key to identifying it as new construction, but those will be reviewed during part 2, the design detail review. So staff is recommending approval.
Great, Abby, thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Abby? No, doesn't look like it. Okay, great. Abby, thank you very much. Can we hear from the applicant at this point?
Coming up, hang on a sec.
Great, thank you, Emily.
You're welcome. I only see Aaron Shump, and I'm trying to move him. I'll keep trying. Jen, you may have to jump in.
Okay, they both have their hands raised, so that's probably why. Allowed to talk. So the phone, I think that is, hold on a second. I think that's Nick that I have. Yep. Phone number. Yep.
Oh, yeah, we can
And
hear
Tom,
you.
we're trying to move you over as well. There we go. Tom just moved.
We've got Tom as well.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, you've got 10 minutes to give your presentation. And before you do, please give your names and your addresses for the record, please. And then you can begin.
Yeah. Hi, this is Tom Hunt, and I'm the owner of the house with my wife, Margaret. And so our address permanent is 3025 Newton. We're living at 3066 West 36th Avenue during this period. And I'll let Nick and his associates introduce themselves real quick.
This is Nick Young. I'm with Mod Architecture Plus Design, and we're the architects for the home for the Denver Infill. Tom, if you want to fire it off, I'll then follow up with any architectural comment.
Sure. Yeah, thanks Commission for the time, and thanks Abby for all of the conversations about this. I think Abby kind of give a snapshot over here. We bought this place 6 years ago and had lived in it for 4 years. We attempted to do a model project for a while, got that approved, and then found some major issues with that, and then more historical research, and were able to come up and realize that the house should be considered non-contributing, and the commission approved that back in February. And so we've been working since then with Abby on some ideas and designs, and we ended up settling in on the foursquare design, as she said, because there was quite a bit of evidence of it around the neighborhood, and it felt like the most straightforward way to achieve the commission's goals of having a very simplified version that did not detract from the existing historic structures, but yet also was an example of a historic style within the neighborhood. So I think Abby did a pretty good job of summarizing it. We have a bunch of slides here, mainly just in case people had questions. We have more detailed pictures of the the examples we looked at in the district. We picked 5. There's a few more in the district. There's plenty of examples of foursquares. So we just kind of picked ones that were closest, and then, that we wanted to be able to model on. If you wanted to, Jen, if you don't mind flipping forward, if you're the one controlling the slides, or Abby, I don't know who is. So, I kind of mentioned this, and then go to the next slide, if you don't mind. The precedents, the key things we took away. Abby talked about the width, that was pretty clear. A couple other things that were really clear were the single dormers on the front, and then a full width porch that had an off-axis entrance. And then one other thing was there's always, not always, but frequently kind of a detail window that was different than the other windows that was on the door side of the bottom story. So we added that. And Yeah, otherwise, I think the design is pretty straightforward, and happy to answer any questions if folks have any, but the time, maybe I just kind of pause there and see what questions folks have. We've got the full timeline at the end as well. And again, would appreciate any feedback or questions y'all have, and hopefully can move us forward, because we want to get back to living here as soon as we can. So thank you.
This is Nick here again. To piggyback off Abby's presentation and then Tom's, a little bit more detail in regards to some architectural features. We collaborated with Abby, her staff, and the R&O. Those details included kind of skinnying up or widening our fireplace chimney stack. They're on the south side of the home. Also, we adjusted our proposed dormers, so the ridge lines were dropped from the overall ridge line of the home. We then went into some nuances of the sizing location of the side porch and the width of the front porch. To piggyback off Abby in regards to the side porch comments, as she mentioned, we previously went in with an addition of it for the existing non-contributing home in the past, and we had a side porch approved. So it'd be nice if that sentiment holds for this design as well, because it'd be really great to activate the north side of this lot. Tom and Margaret, their family enjoys gardening with their 3 daughters, so that kind of language will be carried around to the north side of the home and the west side of the home. So other than that, I think we're looking for approval here, and I know this is just mass form and context. And as Abby mentioned, I think a lot of effort's going to go into the detailing of this home with our recessed windows, with our brick facades, the brick detailing itself and coursings. But today, for mass form and context, we're here to listen to staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Julie, it's my turn to say you're muted.
Sorry, and my kitty is distracting me apparently. Commissioners, does anyone have questions for our applicants? Let me see. All right, sorry about that. Okay, it doesn't look like we have any questions for you, Nick, or for Tom. Thank you very much for your presentation. Then we will go on to see if there are any public comments.
If you have comment up, we do have someone who raised their hand. So Stuart, you are up.
Right.
Let me, before you start talking, let me get to the clock and get the 2-minute timer up. Okay, whenever you're ready.
All right, please give your, Stuart, please give your name and address, and you've got 2 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. My name is Stuart Hayden, 2525 Grape Street.
Stuart, I'm pausing you because you're very quiet. Could you start
sorry.
over?
Can you hear me better?
A little bit.
A little bit. All right, I'll yell. My name is Stuart Hayden. I'm at 2525 Grape Street. And I was originally kind of opposed to the demolition of the building, in the fact that it didn't actually lack as much integrity and maybe more qualified as like a hardship case. But upon seeing these plans, I'm actually, a little more comfortable with it. And so I just want to commend the owners and the architects for doing, their due diligence and designing a solid infill building. And then just, I guess, as a suggestion, maybe consider deconstruction as opposed to demolition of the existing structure, and maybe that'll allow you to incorporate some of the pieces from the old house that you might be able to incorporate into the new building, and save some of those materials for other uses as well. And that's it. Thanks.
All right, Stuart, thank you. Jen, were there any other people that would like to make a comment?
Nope, I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, great. All right, terrific. Before we go into deliberation, do you have any other questions, commissioners, for Abby? No? Doesn't look like it. Okay, great. Great job, Abby. All right, commissioners, let's go ahead and go into deliberation. What do you think? Staff has recommended approval, mass form and context. What all are you thinking? Not all at one time, please.
Well, I don't see anything to object to as far as mass form and context, the street view, the design, slightly larger, but that's all fine. And within the limits, I have total support for Abby's assessment of the plan.
George, thank you. Is there anybody else that want? Anne?
I agree. I think it's a very lovely and appropriate interpretation of the Foursquare. Really nicely done, and I agree with Abby.
I agree with Abby as well. I'm excited to see what they bring and the next phase as well. Gary or Larry, did you have any other comments? Gary?
Nothing for me, just
I agree.
Gary agrees. All righty. Then do I hear a motion from the floor?
I can make the motion.
Thank you, Anne.
Madam Chair, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Okay, good. I move to approve application number 2022-COA-269 for the mass form and context of the proposed infill at 3025 Newton as per design guidelines 4.1 to 4.5, 4.7, 4.8, 4.15, and 4.16. Character defining features for the Wolf Place Historic District, presented testimonies, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thank you, Anne. Do I hear a second?
second.
I think it was Larry. I think we'll give Larry this one this time.
Thank you.
So Larry seconded it. Go ahead and have a vote then. George?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
Anne?
Aye.
And Julie also says aye. Would any of the commissioners mind taking about a 2, 3 minute, 5 minute break?
Yes, please.
Okay, all right. Let's do that. Come back as quickly as we can. We'll go for a little break. So the next project is 320 Vine Street in the Country Club Historic District, and our staff person is Abby. Take it away, Abby.
Okay, so next up is the mass form and context review for a single family infill residence with attached garage in the Country Club District. So the proposed infill residence will be 2 stories in height with a basement. Their residence will have an irregular footprint and a cross-gabled roof. So here is the existing property at 320 Vine. So the applicant is proposing to demolish this. This property is non-contributing as it was built outside the period of significance. However, the applicant has not yet submitted a complete demolition application. So the demolition application for this is still pending and will come to the LPC at a future meeting. So here you see some of the other properties on this block and a diagram there of the block. So 320 Vine is located on a block with a diversity of building masses, roof forms, and styles. Intact historic residences on the block include a front gabled cottage from the 19-teens, English cottage and French Norman Revival residences from the 1930s, and 3 colonial revival residences from the 1930s. There are also several non-contributing properties, a house from 1912 that was substantially altered in 1954, a house from 1955, also substantially altered, and a neo-mansard residence from the 1960s. There is also another Tudor revival on the block, which is located at the end of the block, facing onto East 4th Avenue rather than facing onto Vine. So as you saw in that initial image of the design, the applicant is looking at the Tudor revival style as their reference. So we're doing a modern interpretation of the Tudor revival. So they have submitted these as kind of their, their context, showing what they're pulling from in their design. So there is one of these that they did not include an address for. So that second from the top there on the left. So it's unclear if that one is located in the district or if it's located elsewhere. And then also the one on the bottom there on the left, that one has been significantly, that's one that's been significantly altered and is not a contributing building. But the other ones do provide a good example of other Tudors from Country Club, showing a precedence for the design proposed and pulling from many same features in the kind of roof forms and gable forms that we see on the proposed residence. One aspect here is several of these do the information isn't complete on some of these, and several of these do mention these buildings having a porch. But while some of these have stoops, they're kind of overhangs, there isn't really a true porch on any of these, and porches are not really a characteristic feature of the Tudor revival style. So here you have the analysis of the streetscape provided in the application. So staff do have some concerns just with the lack of alignment shown here in what's submitted with the application. We think that that may just be an error, but based on this, it looks like the photo scale is significantly off from the proposed infill. For example, the streetscape comparison seems to show the top of the second floor windows at 320 Vine aligned with the bottom of the second story window at 340 Vine. It doesn't seem like it seems like probably there is some alignment there, but we are just concerned with this being part of the application, showing that, based on this, there seems to be some really funky scale. So kind of really the strongest alignment shown here is the sketch that the applicant, did provide a drawing of the adjacent property to the right. However, that is a non-contributing property. And so we would really like to see more, making sure how it's going to align with the other contributing properties on the block. So while overall the infill appears to be compatible with the block, the lack of alignment shown in the streetscape comparison makes it difficult to really evaluate this fully, how it will fit into the rhythms of the block. And a revised streetscape study that is more accurate would be helpful, and including more detail on the foundation height. It looks like other properties on the block include at least a small raised foundation. It doesn't look like the proposed infill is, but that's still is a little difficult to tell here. So here is the kind of proposed site plan, and then you can see how it kind of is fitting into the district. So you can tell it has a more rambling plan, and kind of less, the other adjacent properties have a little bit more of a simple rectangular form, which is called out as being preferred in the Country Club design guidelines. However, as seen from the street, it's really primarily the kind of front rectangular mass that is going to be most evident from the street. The kind of L that extends to the back and includes an attached garage is not going to be readily visible. The Country Club design guidelines do say that they prefer detached garages, but attached garages are also found in the Country Club district. And since this one will be located at the rear on the alley, is not going to be readily visible. Staff did not have concerns with it in on this particular lot. The lot is around 87 feet wide, and the proposed infill is around 67 feet wide. So the lot will not have the same sense of spaciousness that you see in much of the district. So the FAR for the proposed development is 36.6%, which exceeds the recommended FAR of 30% that is presented in the district's design guidelines. However, the residences on this block are more closely spaced than in many other areas of the district. And the proposed 10-foot side setbacks are compatible with this block. So in this case, staff finds, the kind of form and place, kind of the property here to be in alignment, with the adjacent. So here you see the facade of the building. So you can see it really is pulling from Tudor-inspired designs. You see this with the cross gables, the kind of multiple gables on the front, the kind of offset and off-centered gables, the round arched door opening, the paired windows that are vertical paired windows that are multi-light are all features that are kind of pulled from Tudor Revival designs. The applicant has been working with Landmark staff on the development of the design, making revisions based on Landmark staff feedback. You can see some of these comments illustrated on page A6 in the application. And overall, staff find the proposed design to be a successful kind of contemporary interpretation of the Tudor Revival style. But we do have some concerns on the facade, basically with the fenestration, and also then with the inclusion of a recessed porch at the corner. So the infill features grouped windows, which are characteristic of the Tudor Revival style. The windows are vertically proportioned and regularly placed. However, the facade windows on the first floor on the north and the second floor windows on the south are much taller than found historically, and staff find that they're out of proportion with the facade and with district patterns. The other elevations also feature kind of a combination of traditionally sized windows with taller windows, but on those, the taller windows will not be readily visible. So staff would recommend on the facade that those windows on the at the bottom, the first floor there on the left, and on the upper floor on the right, be shortened to be kind of in keeping with the adjacent window heights. So the entrance does face the street and is readily visible, which is recommended by the Country Club design guidelines. The design does not include a front porch. It's also suggested, but front porches are not characteristic of the Tudor Revival style. Instead, there's a pent roof over the entrance and a front stoop, and front stoops are very characteristic of the style. However, the proposed infill then also includes a recessed porch at the southwest corner of the facade, which staff feels draws attention away from the primary entrance. Recessed porches kind of has a first floor inset porch with a cantilever of the second floor over, and I'll show additional images in a moment that show that more clearly. But this feature is not characteristic of the district or the Tudor Revival style, and staff find that the placement at the corner of the facade gives an unbalanced appearance to the facade. So here you see the two side elevations. So you can see kind of the main two-story mass and then the kind of single-story connector to the rear single-story attached garage. And as well as then the variety of window patterns, some with the more typical height window, some with the taller windows, but again, not going to have as much visibility on the sides as they will as the taller windows that are proposed on the facade. So here you have the rear, so it shows the that rear single-story garage that will face onto the alley. So here, just a summary of the design. So you can see here both of these kind of recess there at the corner, so that kind of creating a recessed front porch with that kind of second story cantilevering over it. And so that's the primary concern of staff, along with the window heights. The Country Club Historic District Architecture Review Committee has submitted a letter of support for the project, though no details on the meeting were provided. Overall, the RNO said that they support this design. Their only concern is with the lot coverage, which exceeds the recommended FAR of 30% for the district. And you do have that letter in the packet. So staff is recommending approval with conditions. So we would recommend approval with the conditions that the height of the first floor facade window opening on the north and second floor facade window on the south align with the other facade windows, that the recessed porch at the southwest corner of the facade be removed, and to just bring the first floor facade wall forward to align with the second floor wall. And then that also an accurately scaled streetscape comparison be included in the application.
Abby, thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Abby at this point? Anne?
I have a question, Abby. What gives you the assurance that this looks like a contemporary interpretation?
Well, I mean, I guess for staff, are you saying that you think it isn't a contemporary? Like, I guess for us, like, you know,
I'm sorry. Okay.
The intersecting gables, but not quite in a traditional massing, but still referencing the use of multiple gables in a cross gabled form, I think would be one of the key features.
So you think that your average person who would see this would recognize it as contemporary architecture?
I mean, with this same thing that, like the last one we just approved, I mean, there's a line there, but I think that certainly with, again, this is mass form and context. I think with some of, I think with the massing, I also think that with the fact that, we're not reviewing details yet, but that it doesn't have a lot of the applied details. To me, we'll review details in the second phase and that will be key, but this doesn't have, it's currently proposed. There's not, a lot of the applied stick work, applied decoration, the kind of faux half timbering and other features, those decorative. So to me, it is, kind of a more simplified version. The kind of pent roof at the porch there isn't, kind of references some pent roofs, but is different in design than you would find on original. So I find all those kind of features clearly, distinguishing it. Again, a lot of that will also depend on the design detail, things like color choices, and material choices in the design detail will make it, that, will really determine final compatibility. But I think, overall, it would be a contemporary, based on the pending design detail.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, commissioners, anybody else for a question for Abby? Okay, it doesn't look like it. Let's go on then and talk with our applicants. And it looks like they're up already. So you've got 10 minutes to give your presentation. And before you do so, please give us your name and address for the records. And you can begin. You are free to begin as long as you're ready. Carlos, there you go. There, now yeah, there you go.
I was hoping Audrey from my office would go first and then I could finish up, but if she's not able to, I can jump on.
Okay, great.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so sorry about that. My name is Audrey Gibson. I'm an architect with Alvarez Morris. Our address is 141 South Broadway, Suite 200, Denver, Colorado 80209. So firstly, I want to thank Landmark and the RNO for the review comments up to date. It has definitely pushed us to a more balanced and cohesive design. I'd like to recap a few talking points in my presentation and speak to a few of the Landmark staff's comments and concerns. We have a few design elements we are hopeful to push forward that I will further elaborate upon. And before I fully dive in, I definitely want to acknowledge that our streetscape analysis was quite off in scale and has since been fixed, and we can provide that. So in 320 Vine is a single family home in the Country Club district of Denver, designed with a rectilinear volume, steeply pitched gables, masonry details, punched vertical windows, and an asymmetrical form. This house is intended to fit within the eclectic and varied styles found in this landmark district. If you don't mind navigating to the site plan, 320 Vine is situated on an 11,825 square foot lot with an 87-foot frontage. The other contributing homes to the north have roughly 50-foot frontages. And this house has more than 10 feet of setback to the property line on either side and proposes an attached garage to the rear with alley access. The proposed building coverage, as Abby said, is roughly 36.6%, which is below the required 37.5% by the Denver zoning code, but above the neighborhood recommended 30%. We acknowledge that due to the attached garage and associated program in the rear, our coverage is larger than recommended. We've studied removing program in the rear and were successfully able to reach that 30%, though the front facade remained the same and the experienced home from the neighborhood perspective was not affected. And therefore we hope to instead to push to keep the program in the back to accommodate our clients' needs and desired space. We do not intend for this to be a sneaky tactic, but rather just want to discuss some of our options. As stated, the official period of significance for this neighborhood is 1902 to 1945. The original house was built at some point between 1951 and 1956. And since then, there have been multiple alterations to the home, with the most recent being around March of 2002. We hope, therefore, that this home is determined to be non-contributing and that we may construct a home more fitting of the neighborhood. This demolition application will be included in the next phase. I think I just made a clerical error and it did not make it to this one. If we don't mind navigating to the front facade. The style this house is most closely modeled after is a Tudor Revival style home. It features an asymmetrical facade with steep gables, vertical windows with divided panes, and an ornamental chimney. All dormers were originally designed with shed roofs and have since been revised to gable roofs, which relates to the most dormers seen in the neighborhood. And the entry is demarcated with an arched door and sweeping roof, which grounds the central volume and creates more of a human scale. We recognize there are a few elements to our design that the board has expressed concern for. The first being the recessed porch, which has been referred to as a cantilever. With this space, we intended to provide a sheltered area that allows for connectivity to the outdoors and to provide a break or relief to the mass of the front facade. While not as common as other signifying traits of a Tudor home, this design element can be seen in other Tudor Revival houses as seen in Leagoff's book, Tudor Style, which includes some works by Louis Bowman in New York and Granberg and Associate Architects in Connecticut. Abby spoke to a graphic that we had created. I don't know if it made it into this presentation, but it has some imagery in little bubbles that showcase those projects. We've also seen this beautifully done in our opinion, in some more contemporary works by Bobby McAlpine, as seen in his book, Poetry of Place. And I'm glad to provide those images if requested. And as for the windows, we have designed them with vertical emphasis with divided panes. And while they are larger than homes built over 100 years ago, we want to acknowledge that this home is being designed in 2022. And we feel that given the building practice and technology of today with improved insulation and mechanical systems, a home should have the opportunity to larger windows and natural light. And we also argue that the windows provide great compositional value to the facade, creating an extra layer of relief. And ultimately, we feel acknowledging that this is a new build and not truly a historic building is the most honest approach, though we do think that we could add a few more datum lines and align a few of those windows as described to the southwest second story window. And in summary, we hope to construct this Tudor Revival style home to enhance the eclectic character of the country club neighborhood. We believe it is of appropriate scale and typology while still representing a house for today. I know Carlos has some additional comments on some of your concerns, and I'll let him take it away.
Thank you, Audrey. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. Please give us your full name and address, please.
Carlos Alvarez. My address is 141 South Broadway Street, Suite 200, Denver, Colorado, 80209. Audrey did a wonderful job speaking for me because she does it way better than I do and much more clearly understood. I just want to add a couple of things in regards to the letter submitted from the HOA, the Country Club Historic District Architectural Review Committee. They did have some additional supporting notes in which they say that the windows, although the proposed project, and I'm reading this from the letter, although the proposed project does not have traditional window proportions as stated in the guidelines, the board does not object to their reinterpretation presented as a way of differentiating the new build from the surrounding historic homes. When we were working with Landmark staff, they had numerous comments for us that slowly, honestly made the project better, and it spoke more to the Tudor revival. But we left three things untouched and hoping to plead to you guys to help us here. Number one, and I don't know if this is what Anne was asking about at the beginning of the presentation, was we would love to keep the size of the windows. And the reason being is that, we're getting so close to making it look like a Tudor house that would be a differentiating thing that would speak about the 21st century versus the early 20th century. We would feel like it's more appropriate. We did submit a graph that probably didn't make it to this presentation, in which we changed the windows per Landmark recommendation. And honestly, the difference is not that noticeable, but we think it's enough to at least try to keep this. In regards to the covered porch, again, this one, while I respect their recommendation and their knowledge of the type, on our research shows that we've seen numerous samples of like really nice Tudor homes that have covered porch like this. So again, there was some imagery that I thought was attached to the application, but I'm not seeing it right here, of some of the nicer Tudor homes in the United States that have this covered porch underneath a second floor cantilever. So again, we're prepared to enclose it, again, making the house bigger by doing so. We're proposed to make the windows smaller. We're prepared to cover this porch, but we were hoping that you would allow it. And then finally, the FAR. Honestly, our clients would love the house to be smaller, but they throw so much program at us, and they're very fanatics of their workout and this and that. And we came out with this idea that they have a gym that is not buried underground in a basement, and they can have a more pleasant experience. I understand that while we meet the zoning guidelines, we're a little bit over the percentage coverage that the neighborhood recommends. Yet, like Audrey was saying, it's not visible from the street. So if we change the FAR, the front of the house would still look the same, because we would change it on the back. Again, so those are the three items that we were hoping to, that you guys would approve on, and but we're prepared to change if need be. And with that, I think that FAR reduction, and she spoke of the graph that somehow was represented inappropriately, but those are my comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks, Carlos. I appreciate that, and Audrey as well. Commissioners, have you any questions for our applicants? And does it know? Nobody? Okay. All right, applicants, well done. Thank you very much. Let's see, do we have, Jen, do we have any comments from the public?
I don't see any hands raised. No.
No hands raised. All righty. Okay, being as there are no comments from the public, commissioners, do you have any questions for Abby before we go into deliberation? Abby, do you have any comments before? No? Okay, great. All right, then let us go into deliberation. Commissioners, what are your thoughts, Gary?
Well, initially I was supportive of the staff's recommendations regarding the windows. But after Anne raised the question about what differentiates this from a traditional Tudor building, I'm thinking the front porch, and the alteration of window sizes actually does that. And actually that the front facade reads modern because of the larger window on the right side on the second floor and the floor to ceiling windows on the left side on the first floor, and the covered, I don't know if you'd really call that a porch, but it's a covered outdoor area. It's a porch, I guess. I think those things are what makes this building a modern interpretation, and kind of deals with that issue about false history. That's all I have to say, I think. I mean, I was a little concerned about all the gables in the front, but I guess I'm getting more comfortable with that.
Okay, Gary, thank you very much. Anne, did you want to comment?
I totally agree with Gary. I mean, I had the same thought, because when I first saw this project, it really worried me that we were getting into sort of postmodern Disney World here. But I think that, and the applicant said it himself, I think the larger windows, I think the kind of interesting reinterpretation of the porch, I'm with Gary. I think the staff Abby did a great job, but I would eliminate the condition both for the change of the windows and the porch. And then I think it really will read as a contemporary interpretation.
Yeah, I agree with you. George and Larry, any comments from you all?
Yeah, how squishy is the 30% FAR?
Oh, squishy?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a technical term.
Yeah, obviously.
Is it a guideline or is it not?
Jen, can you comment on that?
Yeah, so the Country Club Historic District guidelines have a for the landmark guidelines for Country Club talk about the amount of lot coverage. That's the word I'm looking at, the phrase I'm looking for. But it's different than the zoning code requirement, which I think is a larger number that they can have a bigger house on the lot. Abby, correct me if I'm wrong there. Yeah, okay. So it has to absolutely comply with zoning, but we encourage it to comply with the Country Club guidelines. However, the Country Club guidelines haven't been updated in a while, and there have been some circumstances where the commission has approved larger buildings on the lot on a case-by-case basis, depending on the building itself.
And
Abby?
I'll just say,
yeah,
that was the basis for the staff recommendation here of approval of it, because we felt that they were still had side setbacks that were compatible, that it still kind of fit with the other ones on the block. We found that FAR that's in the guidelines really fits some of those larger blocks on Country Club, is really designed to retain that big open space feeling that you have in other parts of Country Club, but that there are pockets of Country Club that have smaller setbacks and don't have those large lots, and that the FAR doesn't always work as recommended in the guidelines. We found like doesn't necessarily apply uniformly to all the lots in Country Club, because there is actually quite a bit of variety within Country Club. So if you decide, so basically to George's question, you can decide, that based on this lot that you think in this particular circumstance that the FAR, as proposed here is compatible, would be, something within your, LPC purview to do.
Okay, thanks for clarification, Jen and Abby. Larry, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, George, were you finished with your thoughts, or was that?
Oh, yeah, I think obviously, 36 versus 30 plus an attached garage when we're dealing with detached garages, I guess it really is squishy. And that's all I'll have to say about it.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, George. Okay, Larry.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to agree with Gary and Ann regarding the scale of the windows contributing to this, having a contemporary feel to it. I think I do have one slight concern with the sill height of the window on the southwest, just above the opening of the porch. It looks like it's quite low relative to the header of the opening. So I guess kind of a friendly suggestion to the designers to either lower the opening height or raise the sill height of that window to be a little bit more proportional. And then, yeah, as far as that porch itself, I think having heard the precedents, not necessarily from the neighborhood, but precedents from the style, having inset porches and the way that the site wall definitely blocks your access to that, so you wouldn't confuse that for the entry. I don't feel like, yeah, it necessarily confuses someone about this being like a kind of entry porch. To me, at first glance, I don't know how other commissioners feel about that. But yeah, those are my comments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Larry, thank you. So it sounds like we're in kind of reaching an agreement here, but whoever would like to make the motion, it sounds to me, and I agree with Ann and Gary on this as well, about the windows on the lower left and upper right. And then, so it looks to me, if I'm reading it properly, it looks like the first two conditions would be removed. And then we would just ask for an accurately scaled streetscape comparison, if I am reading that correctly. So do I hear a motion? Gary?
Well, Madam Chair, I'm ready to make an motion, but I have a question.
Sure.
Given that the motion will eliminate the first two proposed conditions, I'm wondering if guideline 4.8 and 4.16, if they're still relevant enough to leave in the motion. I kind of think they are, but I'm willing to listen to other opinions on that. 4.8 is about windows, proportions, and alignment, and 4.16 is about that porch on the southwest corner.
Right.
I think maybe leave 4.8 on the windows, but strike 4.16.
I would agree with that, Gary.
Okay. Good. Okay, Madam Chair.
Yes, Gary.
I move to conditionally approve application number 2022-COA-270 for the mass form and context of the new infill at 320 Vine Street as per Country Club design guidelines B1, B3, B4, D1 through D4, F1 through F3, general design guidelines 4.3 through 4.5, 4.7, 4.8, 4.15, 4.18, and 4.19. Character defining features for the Country Club Historic District. Presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the following conditions. 1, to provide an accurately scaled streetscape comparison, period.
Thank you, Gary. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Anne, thank you very much. All right, let's take a vote then. George,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
and Julie also votes aye. So the application was conditionally approved. Thank you very much to the applicants and to the staff. We have, it looks like one more on our agenda today, which is 345 Gaylord Street. And it's Abby again. Take it away, Abby.
Okay, final project of the afternoon. So this project is dealing with changes that were made in construction that exceeded the scope of the commission approval. So you see the property before work was started on the left, and then you see on the right the property as it is today. So the LPC had previously approved the demolition of a single-story existing rear side addition to the house and a rear garage, and had approved then their replacement with a 2-story rear and side addition with a single-story connector to an attached garage. Work was completed in 2020. In October 2020, our landmark inspector discovered several items that did not align with the landmark approval when conducting a final inspection. Alterations included changes to the facade entry and the total replacement of historic windows, both items which require commission review. So landmark staff requested that an application documenting all of the changes be submitted in order to place this on a commission agenda. An application was submitted in April 2021, but staff found it did not have sufficient documentation of the windows that were replaced. Since it was impossible to conduct a window assessment for the windows removed, staff instead requested documentation that the replacement windows match what was there as closely as possible, including side-by-side comparison photos of the house before and after the windows were replaced. By April 2022, no additional application materials had been submitted. So staff then gave a deadline of May 31st to be sure that those were submitted to prevent any enforcement actions, and that was met, and now you have this before you today. So in your application, you had both the application prepared, the new application by the applicant, as well as the previous approval. If you have that for reference, so you can see what was approved originally. So we'll review and go through then some of those alterations. So as mentioned, one of the main ones was the replacement of all of the windows. So you can see here in the plans approved by the LPC, just a note that it did have on all of those plans, it did state that the existing windows were to be restored. So in the previously approved application, there was no mention of ending window replacement. When they did decide to replace the windows, they used the same windows that had been approved for the addition. So these were aluminum clad wood with simulated divided lights. So the application as presented to you today does have side-by-side comparisons as close as they could get with photographs showing existing and then current. So you can see some of those there. Staff do find overall that the windows appear to be compatible. It's hard. There's not a great amount of documentation here, but we feel that the windows that have been installed are compatible with the building. They seem to have the same light pattern and operation. So overall, staff find that based on the documentation available, that the windows replacements are compatible with the design. So here you see kind of the floor plan that was, our site plan that was approved here on the left and the as-built on the right. So some of the changes, there was a new AC unit provided that are not on the plan. There was also additional site work conducted. If you look there on the upper right, there's a lot of additional site features. They're shown on this site plan, but no detail is provided. So we're a little unclear on what exactly dimensions, materials, height of these site features are. So that is something that we need additional documentation for, comparable to what we would ask for, any other application that came in for site features. Also, additional outdoor grill, and so some additional site features added that we don't have sufficient documentation for. You can see then also here the changes to the entryway, which I will cover more in detail then in a moment. So here, some side-by-side comparisons. So historically, the house had a brick front stoop with a metal, and then had a metal railing. We don't know the age of the metal railing, but it did seem to be a historic configuration with that front stoop. The front stoop was demolished and replaced with, instead of the multiple steps, it now has one brick step, then covered by concrete, rather than having brick base and then a wall enclosure was added around the front stoop. Alterations were also made to the front egress window. So the front egress window was existing, but changes were made to the configuration of the window from as proposed in the previous plan. I will also cover that in more detail in a moment. So there were some other changes throughout. You can see some changes such as moving doors or windows that happened throughout. Most of these were, well, all the door, window, those kind of fenestration changes were all made to the addition, not to the historic building. Since they are not readily visible, staff did not have any concerns with some of those changes in placements. So you can see again some changes to some placements and windows at the rear. They did also change the pitch that you see there of the garage roof. The garage roof used to have a much steeper pitch, which was more in keeping with the historic residence. It now has a much shallower pitch, but this is located to the rear and pretty, and set back, so not, super readily visible. So here you have the other side. So you can see again, just some changes to fenestration, also added these two AC units on the side. So then to get more into details of some of the elements the staff is really concerned with. So you see here the historic existing condition of the entryway there on the left. So with the brick steps up and a brick stoop, and then a metal railing there on the side. So instead, that has all been demolished. They have a single brick step within a concrete base, and then a wall enclosure with kind of a heavy brick pier there in front. Staff do not find this compatible. It's adding a feature that did not exist historically. It's enclosing, kind of blocking off an entrance that was not blocked off. And we did find that the brick, having the brick stoop, was a simple entrance, but was really kind of a character defining element there to the front porch. As you see here, they've also kind of changed the shape and configuration and widened it as well. Staff aren't as concerned with the widening as we are with the fact that the really visible change there of replacing the brick with concrete and with enclosing a feature that was not enclosed previously. Then we also have some concerns with changes made to the front egress. So it had, as I said, the egress was existing, but you can see here the existing egress on the left that it was before work began, and it had brick and really blended with the adjacent building. You can see then here the new egress well that was put in is raised more and has a metal grate and is much more visible on the facade than the existing previous egress well was. So our guidelines do state that to try to avoid, to not put egress wells on the facade. In this case, it was an already existing one, but I also say that egress wells should be as inconspicuous as possible. Staff does not feel this is. Since this image was taken, some additional landscaping has been added on the facade, which blocks this somewhat. But generally, landmark reviews are done without regard to landscaping, simply because landscaping is temporary and could change at any time. So we would recommend that have a treatment that is more like what was there previously with the brick, in order to help it blend more with the house, since it is located right there on the facade. So yeah, okay, so staff is recommending approval with the following conditions, and that the front stoop be returned to its previous appearance, that the egress well in the facade be brick with a minimal, with a kind of flush cover that doesn't project above, and that complete documentation of the site work, particularly the site features there on the side of the property that were added, be added to the application, which would include material detail, height, and dimensions.
Sorry about that. Abby, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Abby before we talk to the applicants?
I do.
Okay, George.
Abby, if you could go back to the side-by-side comparisons of the facade, the drawings. Yeah, this will do. No, there you go. I have a question about the drawings of the windows. Let us say in the dormer to the upper right of the front door. Those windows look very different. Is there some kind of medallion or stained glass frill on these windows as opposed to the other ones? This looks strange. This looks like an attempt to redo history. Or is that just computer generated?
I am not sure, and I would suggest asking the applicant.
Okay.
Good idea. Thanks, Abby. Other questions for Abby? Anne?
Abby, can you go back to the side-by-side photograph? I think it's of the south side. It was the very first photograph that you showed. Okay, that's great. Is there a chimney missing?
Yep.
Yes.
And that chimney does it show up in the drawings as being not there?
I tried to figure out, it didn't show up in some of the other ones either. I'm also not sure exactly what happened there. So I think another question for the applicant to address.
For sure.
Thank you.
Other questions for Abby? It doesn't look like it. So let's get our applicants situated so we can let them give their presentation. Okay, John, it looks like you're in the meeting now. You'll have 10 minutes to make your presentation. And before you begin, please give your name and address, please.
Hi, John Mattingly, 517 East Bayard Avenue, Denver, Colorado, 80209. Thanks, Abby, for dealing with this. This project happened at a time where I don't remember landscaping and things of that nature being reviewable, and we weren't submitting landscaping drawings back then. So there's some landscaping adjustments there that need to be addressed. And I'll speak first to that window well. The change there is that we did need to make that well deeper on our proposed plans, as I believe was approved, because it doesn't meet egress as it is. It was a short well, like you would find in an old building like that. So we had to expand it to 3 feet in order for it to meet egress. But keeping it low to the ground with the brickwork around it, I agree. I think it would look much better to have that in brick and in a flush well. So I agree with Abby's findings there. And the garage that we saw in the back, the approved, I don't know how this got past the building department, but the approved plans were a zoning violation, and we had it at 19 feet instead of 17, and so needed to be shortened, which is why the pitch changed back there. And then as it relates to the front stoop, that was a construction scenario where I'm told that there was a talk between the homeowner and our construction manager and discussions about whether it was original or not. It was actually, there was a very cold joint where that patio met the house, as I recall, and it had somewhat had a negative grade on it. And so they were complaining of it not draining properly and not being original. And there's not a lot of evidence to suggest that it was or was not. We don't have any historic photos of the place. And so it was taken off during construction. And so I was tasked to design something to put in its place. And so that's what I came up with. So, you know, I'd rather not take it off, but I understand Abigail's point. And so that was one of those, something was removed during construction that wasn't on the prints. And so we had I was suddenly given a task of putting something there. And I personally kind of like it because it does create some privacy. There's the thievery that goes on these days with things being left on the front porch. And it was very bald as it was there before. So I really don't know if it was original that way or not, but we have nothing to suggest otherwise. So I'll leave that to staff's best recommendations and respond accordingly. And then on the window front, what you're seeing, the difference between the two on that original image, there was storm windows all over that building. And so, which kind of skewed, and that's just different line work in those two different drawings, change in software between when we generated the one and the other. But behind that storm glass, in that little dormer, the smaller gable dormer above the front entry, there was like a hodgepodge of stained glass in some of those window sashes and not the others. And so those windows had been greatly tampered with, that you really can't see it behind that storm window that's there. And the same is true on all of those windows. There's storm windows over them, and then what was behind them. In some cases, there was the glass panes didn't match, and so homeowner produced a letter that said that from the previous person that owned it, explaining how they had done replacements throughout the years on all of those windows, and so we did the best we could to replace with a perfect match. We left the spread molds and the brick molding that were in the walls are original. And it was a sash only replacement that went on to match the pattern and the divided light that was there before. So everything, that's why you look, the historic context exists because you can see that thickened spread mold, you know, in that side image between those casement sash windows. And so all of that was left in place and wasn't changed. But the biggest difference that you're seeing streetwise is that the storm glass is gone. So, which is something I typically try and encourage my clients to do because they look terrible. So that's how that all shook out. And that was, I think I answered your questions as it relates to the windows and what had gone on there, but there was a bunch of, some of those windows had yellow glass in them and, you know, in one pane and not the other kind of a thing, was what was going on. It was in pretty bad shape when we got our hands on it. So, and that was again why when the front porch was brought to my attention, it just did not seem, it seemed like the house would have had something better than that. I just don't know what it was. And it was failing from a drainage perspective, but that was again, a site condition where demo crews are there, homeowners there, construction managers there, the front stoop in its very minimal state, which is, it wasn't much there, was removed in place of the new one. So that's the story of that project.
Okay, great, John. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Commissioners, have you got any questions for John? Anne?
I have a question. Yes. Can you pull up again the tubes? Was a chimney eliminated?
Yeah, there was you can obviously see that there isn't one on that left side. There was an old coal chute there. But it doesn't appear that way. I don't recall the process of that being eliminated, but that was that chimney wasn't for anything but I think it was a coal chute or something of that nature. And it was, so it doesn't appear to be there.
Anybody else? Any questions for John? Well, I'm not seeing any other questions for you, John. Thank you very much. I appreciate your presentation. Do we have any public comments on this, Jen?
Nope, no one has raised their hand.
No one, nobody in public comments. Okay. Commissioners, before we go into deliberation, did you have any other questions for Abby? Doesn't look like it. Abby, did you have anything else you wanted to say before we go? Okay, great. All right. Commissioners, let us go into deliberation then. What are your thoughts? I know. I know. It's a tough one.
Maybe I'll say something. We had a project like this, I would say 3 or 4 years ago, in which the documentation and what happened in the field and everyone's answer was very muddled. And it also came to us as a violation. Maybe Gary remembers it. And it just went on forever. And it's just hard to know what to say, quite honestly. And there's no guideline that covers this, but I completely support the staff's recommendation. And I think in particular, the problem with the front stoop is that the brick is the wrong brick. And maybe if it had been done well, and maybe if that had actually matched, it doesn't even look like it matched the mortar or the coursing, maybe there would be a reason to look at it. But it seems to me it was done sort of poorly and doesn't respect the quality of brickwork that you can see on the right hand, the original brickwork at all. So I support the staff's recommendation. I am curious because obviously the chimney was something we could see. What else ended up being changed in this that wasn't documented anyway? But having gone through this a few years ago, it's probably better just to do the best we can and stay with the staff's recommendations and try and get better documentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed that the brick looked new as well. It's obviously new construction. Gary, it looked like you had something that you wanted to add, or was I wrong?
Well, I didn't really have anything to add. I agree with staff's recommendations. I was just trying to look at the detail of the new porch closer to see what was done, but I agree that it looks like the grade's been changed too, because there's like there's 3 risers and another one at the door in the original configuration, and there's only 2 risers and 1 at the door in the current configuration, which means I think the grade's been changed. So if we decide to return to the original configuration without also messing with the grade, there will only be 2 risers instead of 3. And is that acceptable to us? And I think it is to me, but I think it needs to be need to have agreement on that.
Yeah, I agree. I noticed that as well. But I do agree with you. I would be okay with the current grading configuration. What are other commissioners thinking about that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the wall component is really the problematic part of the new porch configuration.
I agree with that. Anne, what were you thinking?
I agree.
Okay, cool. George, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
No, I think I will concur with Abby's conclusions in that is, basically all within our purview that we can ask for, although, absolutely detailed documentation on the windows and the site work and all of that should be required, but there's not much you can do to revise what's been done other than Abby's recommendations, and I think they should be.
All right. Thank you, George. So whoever makes the motion, number 1 is return the front stoop to its previous appearance. perhaps we'd ought to, if we are agreed upon that, and it sure sounds like we are, perhaps we should note that in there that the 2 risers is fine, rather than the 3. Just so that we're more, specific, so they have the information that they need. All righty, that said, do I hear a motion from the floor?
I'll try it.
George, go for it. Thank you.
I move to conditionally approve application 218 COA 5097 for revisions to the previously approved COA at 345 Gaylord Street as per design guidelines 2.4, 2.1, 2.12, 2.18, 2.19, and 2.34 documentation and information provided in the staff report with the following conditions. Return the front stoop to its previous appearance, including 2 or 3 risers. Reverse the egress wall. Number 2 is revise the egress wall on the facade to be brick with a flush cover. And 3, provide complete documentation of the site work.
All right. Do I hear a motion or a second? I'm sorry.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Gary. Jen, did you pop up to
I
talk to?
popped up, yes, because George, you said in the motion that it was application 218 COA 5097.
Yes.
That's not, it's
50, okay, 000097.
Yes, but also 2018, not 218. And then the other thing is you said guideline 2.1, not 2.10. Just trying to get it out.
Yeah, and I thought so too. So I will agree to those changes.
Yeah.
Well, someone's got to make an amendment. I can't do it.
I was about to make said friendly amendment that we revise the application number to 2018-COA-00000097 and per design guidelines 2.4, 2.10, 2.12, 2.18, 2.19, and 2.34. George, do you accept that friendly amendment?
Absolutely.
Gary?
Yes.
Thank you, Jen.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All righty, everybody. Let's take a vote then. George?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
Ann?
Aye.
Julie says aye as well. All right. The application has been conditionally approved. And that brings us to the end of our review projects. Was there anything, Jen, that you wanted to talk to us about?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Well, gosh, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate everybody's work. Abby, it's a good thing that you got home. I'm glad to know you're home safe and sound. Alrighty, everybody, I am adjourning the meeting at 3:56 for the record, and I'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.